roadmap of Fiji, which is currently going through our cabinet processes. We are expecting the cabinet's approval anytime soon, and our heartfelt appreciation to UN ESCAP for support in developing this important roadmap. The SDG7 roadmap for Fiji has been the foundation for the development of our national energy policy for Fiji. The analysis and recommendations have been considered in setting the targets and directions in our national energy policy, which is also currently in the process of finalization. So SDG7 roadmap is a much needed document. I have been informed that UN ESCAP has already supported member countries to develop 10 SDG7 roadmaps. I commend the team for doing such a great job. This expert working group meeting is being organized to look back at what has been achieved so far, to consult the findings from the roadmaps, invite comments and suggestions from experts, and identify any possible areas that next step can be used to do it and what it needs improvement to reflect on the emerging directions for energy transition. It is very timely and much needed workshop as the energy transition space is evolving faster than ever before. And I'm confident that today's discussion will lead to further strengthening the next step tool and the energy transition planning process, which will ensure a greater support for countries and cities in the Asia-Pacific region. My sincere appreciation and thank you for everyone joining today. And I wish you all a very fruitful day and productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your remarks, and also thank you for your support to regional energy cooperation on ESCAP's platform through your chairmanship of the Committee on Energy. And also, it's been a pleasure working with your hardworking officials at the Department of Energy, who we've had the pleasure of cooperating with for the SDG7 roadmap. So let me now turn to our final welcome address. It's the Honourable Mr. Ganesh Prasad Dakal. He's the Ambassador of Nepal in Thailand. Mr. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. A very good morning to everyone. Her Excellency Armida Aliswajawana, UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of ESCAP, Honorable Minister of Energy of Fiji, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am delighted to welcome you to the Expert Working Group on Universal Access to Modern Energy Services, Renewable Energy, Energy Efficiency, and Cleaner Use of Fossil Fuels under the theme Development of National SDG7 Roadmap to Achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement. The Expert Working Group, or EWG, plays a key role in generating knowledge, information and policy research to ensure informed deliberation at the international meetings such as the Committee on Energy and the Asian Pacific Energy Forum. This particular EWG is focused on SDG7 roadmaps, an initiative of ESCAP that is supporting its member states in developing enabling policy mechanism to achieve the SDG7 and NDC targets. I very much commend ESCAP for completing a number of national and sub-national roadmaps, including one for Nepal. SDG7 is at the heart of the SDGs. Fulfilling this goal is important to ensure a sustainable energy future as well as to support the achievement of many other SDGs. Transitioning the energy sector to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the objective of the Paris Agreement is a complex and challenging task for policymakers worldwide. The COVID-19 pandemic has added even more challenges. Economic disruption spurred by the pandemic are causing severe pressure on livelihoods, triggering widespread hardship for citizens. The tightening fiscal space has reduced the ability of governments to ramp up investment in the sustainable energy transition. We are not far from 2030. We need to make concerted efforts to achieve these targets in the next decade. In most countries, we have national energy policy or plans. However, most of them are not aligned with the objectives and targets of SDG7. The development of SDG7 roadmaps can help formulate the policies that are required. I have been informed that some countries have used these roadmaps to initiate policies at the national level. Energy demand in this region has almost doubled since 2000, and it continues to rank the highest among global regions in its energy intensity. It is projected that the total global energy demand by 2040 will increase by 30%, and the Asia Pacific will account for 2/3 of the growth. An ambitious effort is urgently required to accelerate existing initiatives and action to deliver SDG7 while ensuring access to affordable, reliable, renewable, and modern energy for all by 2030. This is reinforced with a sustained and decisive effort towards achieving the global climate targets of the Paris Agreement. The Asia Pacific region can play an important role to achieve the global goals. Countries in Asia and the Pacific are demonstrating global leadership in their strong commitment on energy access, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. China, Japan, and the Republic of Korea have committed to carbon neutrality by 2050 or 2060. As the upcoming COP26 meeting in Glasgow turns the world's focus toward decarbonization, new energies and approaches are emerging alongside new ambitious targets. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe this EWG meeting will serve as an opportunity to learn more on the progress of SDG7 roadmaps and their effectiveness in developing measures at the national and city level. I am looking forward to hearing from the country representatives on their experiences and lessons learned. I extend my appreciation to colleagues from international agencies, universities, and members of the Asia Pacific Network of Energy Think Tanks for joining this important event. Your contribution would greatly help to further strengthen ESCAP's work on making regional progress on SDG7. I hope you will have a fruitful meeting. Thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for those warm words and really setting the scene for our discussions. So, colleagues, that completes the introductory part. But one thing we did want to do is take a quick picture, a group picture of everybody. So if you would be kind enough to switch on your cameras, my colleague Kunsarina will attempt to take a snap of as many people as she can, or maybe in different batches, because there are almost 100 of you, I think. So if you bear with us for a second, we will just try to get a couple of images, and Kunsarina will let me know when we're done. So we look forward to your best smiles. Did you manage to capture the picture, Kunsarina?
Yes, this is done.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So it's so nice to see so many of you on screen. So really that wraps up the introductory session. So as you know, today there's a morning session and an afternoon session. And broadly speaking, the morning session is about stock taking, about examining where we've got to so far and looking at some of the experiences, whereas the afternoon is more forward looking to try to think how this initiative might evolve as we go forward into the changing energy landscape. But what I would like to do at this point is pass the proceedings across to the chair of session one. He is Mr. Michele Bellina, the Director of the Department of Energy in the Ministry of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, Fiji. We've had the pleasure of working closely with Michele and his team in developing the Fiji SDG7 roadmap. So I can think of no one better qualified to steer us through session one. So may I hand the floor across to you, Mr. Bellina, to chair the session.
Thank you very much, Michael. The Honorable Mr. Chone Usamate, Minister of Infrastructure and Meteorological Services, Government of Fiji. Honorable Mr. Ganesh Prasad Dakal, Ambassador, Embassy of Nepal in Thailand. Honorable Ms. Amida Salisa Alisabana, Executive Secretary of ESCAP, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you all in this expert working group meeting. I would like to start by noting that the SDG7 roadmap for Fiji has been a very important step in setting targets and goals in our national energy policy. I hope this experience has been replicated in other countries that have developed their own roadmaps. In this session, we will have the opportunity to hear from countries and cities about the experiences and lessons learned in developing the SDG7 roadmap. Following this, we will have an open discussion where participants will reflect on the national experiences and identify the overlaps between national roadmap recommendations, drawing together common regional needs for capacity development or further analytical work. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Michael, Section Chief of the Energy Division of ESCAP, to present on the progress of SDG7 roadmap development. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Belina. Let me just load up my presentation. Just give me 1 second. Okay, are you able to see the presentation right now?
Yes, Michael, we can see it.
Very good. Okay. So let me begin by giving you a perspective on how the SDG7 roadmap development has gone so far. And many of you will have been working on your own national roadmap, or you might be sitting at the periphery of this discussion, but either way, you might not be familiar with the totality of the program. So what I'll attempt to do with a few short slides is step you through what's been achieved and some of the issues that we foresee. So going back to the start, this is really a wonderful example of a program that's been instituted by an intergovernmental process, because as you may know, it was actually the ministerial level meeting of the Asia Pacific Energy Forum, which through their declaration requested ESCAP to start this process of developing these national roadmaps. But when we talk about Next Step, which is of course the name of the tool, there are actually 3 outputs. It's not just the roadmap, because in addition to the roadmap, we have the Next Step portal, which is an online portal, and we're also doing capacity building. So the roadmap obviously does all of these things which we've set out. It looks at the energy situation and assesses the gaps and comes up with recommendations in terms of policy measures and technologies to reach the SDG7 targets. But the portal allows countries to log in and actually do a little bit more into the future in terms of changing some of the parameters and looking at different scenarios, which is incredibly valuable. And the capacity building is important too, because this is, energy planning itself is a complex undertaking. This is a new tool. So we work very closely with stakeholders in each country that we're doing the roadmap in. We support the better understanding of the portal. And actually, as of yesterday, I think we've completed an e-learning program. So there is the capacity to get online and actually learn how to do it through a hands-on e-learning program. So these are the 3 outputs that we have set in place on the Next Step. In terms of progress, I think we've exceeded our expectations because, of course, the ministerial declaration specifies that countries request the ESCAP Secretariat for this support. It's not as if we come uninvited to each country. It's really a partnership between us and each member state. And of course, from the country perspective, there is a lot of effort required on their side. It's a very intensive participatory process. So we're very thrilled to have actually got so much interest in the program and been able to complete so many roadmaps. So you can see that it's color-coded here in terms of whether it's completed, under development, or to be developed. So we have roughly, I think, a total of 10 roadmaps completed. And we've also expanded the program to look at cities, because cities are a really important element of the energy and climate change response. And often you get a lot of, I wouldn't say often, I would say always, you get a huge amount of commitment and energy and enthusiasm from cities to do more on sustainable energy. So we've been really happy that we've been able to apply the same methodology at the city level. And I would say going forward into the future, we have a number of other countries which have indicated interest. I think we are open to do more. We're certainly gearing up to do more of this work. So we would welcome an approach from any member state or city to partner with us in next step. And I think based on this meeting and other deliberations we'll be having, we're looking for opportunities to enhance the sophistication or maybe the reach of the analysis as we go forwards. So what I'd like to do now is to step through some of the common findings and policy recommendations, because this is a regional forum, which means that what we try to do is pull together common messages, common conclusions across the region, and then look at how we solve many of those challenges or support those needs on a regional basis. That is kind of our raison d'etre at ESCAP. So it's really important to look at the suite of completed roadmaps and figure out across the SDG7 targets, what are some of the commonalities? So in the next couple of slides, what we'll try to do is spell this out. In terms of access to electricity, all of the countries and cities we worked in are expected to reach universal electricity access by 2030 with the current policy settings. And some have already achieved this. And to speed up that process, the roadmaps have concluded that last mile electrification can be sped up through off-grid electricity systems. Now, there is some complexity in this because we're treating access as a binary measure. It doesn't look at the quality of that supply or the availability of it, how many appliances you can run. There is a lot more work that needs to be done in the electricity access challenge beyond 2030, but we're responding to what's set out in SDG7, but at the same time not ignoring there are bigger issues at play there. In terms of clean cooking, this is a very different story because clean cooking is nowhere at the level of access to electricity. We're hovering around 65, 66% access to electricity across the Asia Pacific. So this is a major challenge. It's an issue for health and well-being of people across the region. So as part of the roadmap conclusions across multiple roadmaps, the induction electricity cooking stove has seemed to be an effective solution and has formed a big part of the recommendations, particularly for on-grid households where you have access to that large amount of energy supply. There are I suppose the reasons behind this are about efficiency, that it's an efficient technology. You don't need a lot of infrastructure if you're plugged into the existing grid. And in countries where the share of renewables is rising, this introduces the opportunity for renewable cooking. So as well as looking after the clean cooking aspect, also to make better use of renewables. So this is the conclusion on clean cooking. So just moving forward in terms of renewable energy, phasing out of coal from power generation. This is the topic du jour, I suppose, of COP26, as well as what the Secretary General of the United Nations has been reinforcing for several years now. Phasing out of coal is critical for our net zero and to stay on the pathway to achieve the Paris Climate Change Agreement. What the roadmaps have set out is that new coal-fired power plants are no longer cost-effective in most cases compared to renewables, and this should be really a focus of for policymakers to avoid the risk of stranded assets into the future. The second point is that increasing renewable energy share is really important for SDG7, but also for strengthening energy security, particularly in parts of the world like the Pacific, where a lot of that energy is imported, posing not just sort of financial impost in terms of balance of payments, but supply risks and so forth. And the last point on renewables is that renewable energy auctions have emerged as a means of accessing cost-effective supplies of renewable energy and incentivizing more innovation and competition in the market. It also provides large energy needs, a means of decarbonizing their electricity supply, because as a city, of course, you don't have control over national generation or grid management policy, but it is a means that you can access renewable energy supply if you're a city. So moving on to energy efficiency, SDG 7.3. Of course, energy efficiency is the low-hanging fruit in the climate debate. There is a lot we can do with energy efficiency that has not yet been realized, and it's no surprise that the roadmaps have uncovered this as one of the principal recommendations. So what do we do in energy efficiency? Minimum energy performance standards. So in other words, setting rules that require appliances to be more efficient, which evidence has shown doesn't necessarily cost more to manufacture an energy efficient appliance. It really just requires the manufacturers to innovate in that direction and not to supply the lower quality, lower efficiency products to different markets. Electrification of transport is really important, and it's not just private electric vehicles, it's really electrifying public transport vehicles that give you the biggest gains. And even if it's not electric transport, moving to buses, this type of thing in cities is really important for reducing emissions. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's incentivized a move away from public transport, which is really unfortunate because this is one of the largest energy efficiency gains. And then lastly, energy efficiency measures in commercial and industrial centers. So initiatives such as green building codes and these types of initiatives, undertaking energy audits and implementing best practices. So that's a quick kind of tour of some of the common findings and policy recommendations. What might be of further interest to participants is how, in the short space of time these have been published, how these have found their way into national policy frameworks. So there are a couple of really good examples, I think, from Georgia, where the roadmap has been published and it's been incorporated into the National Energy and Climate Plan. In Tonga, of course, they've developed Term Plus for the next 15 years. The roadmap has been an integral element of that, and we're also looking to do some further work with Tonga to support them in that area. And then Fiji, you just heard from the Minister of Fiji, and of course, Mr. Belina is the head of the Department of Energy in Fiji, who's chairing this session. Fiji has been working on its national energy policy, and as the Minister said, the roadmap has been a big support to developing the policy framework there. So what about some lessons learned? I think it's always good to be reflective and think about what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well in this process. And we are working with Professor David Harries, a consultant who's based in Perth, Western Australia, who'll be doing a lot deeper look at this and interviewing some of you, in fact, about your experiences. But as kind of a starting point, some of the issues we're facing are about data availability. We don't always have all of the data that we require. We want to ensure that there's good ownership of the roadmap, because reports are great. We produce so many reports in the UN, but it's how those reports have ownership at a national level and are translated into action that's really important. And then we think in terms of future direction, in the short space of time that we've been operating with this program, a lot has changed in the conversation around energy and climate. There are new technologies even on the horizon in terms of hydrogen. So how do we adapt the methodology to take account of these new technologies and new directions? So I won't take up any more of your time on this. I think that's been a good introduction, but I would just refer you to our website where all of the roadmaps have been published, and you can certainly look through those at your leisure. But I think we as ESCAP Secretariat and through Professor Harries will probably be knocking on your door soon enough in the next couple of weeks or months to ask you some more in-depth questions on these issues. So with that, perhaps I'll stop sharing my presentation and pass the floor back to Mr. Belina.
Thank you very much, Michael. We will now hear about country experiences and lessons learned. First, I would like to invite the representative from the Kingdom of Tonga, my good friend, Mr. Offa Sefana, Acting Director Energy, to give his deliberation. Mr. Sefana, you have the floor.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Mr. Sefana. You have to unmute, please. We can hear you.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, okay. Thank you. We can hear you now.
Clear? Okay.
Yeah, it's clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I'm glad to see you again, old friend. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, express of the Tonga energy energy nation and take ESCAP as well as capacity for effort, positive thinking and
Mr. Savannah, maybe your voice is too low. If you can increase your mic, your volume, we can hear you properly.
Right. I'm sorry. Is it clear now?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Chair. Anyway, I would like to thank the ESCAP as well as Murdoch University for the effort and the positive thinking and insight that you have all put into Tonga's newly endorsed SDG7 roadmap strategy. I thank you all also for the opportunity to take part in this important resourceful event and sharing a bit from our SDG7 roadmap strategy experiences. I also like to acknowledge the government of Tonga's support and endorsing of the SDG7 as a high-level living document, and its launching during the first quarter of this year. Well, for many decades, Chair, petroleum products, of course, have been major sources of energy for all Tonga's economic sectors, most importantly the electricity sector and transportation. Of course, the burning carbon fuels produces greenhouse gases, which causes climate change and harmful impacts on people's well-being and environment. This affects everyone and not just a few. And Tonga's global electricity use has been rising rapidly. And of course, without a stable electricity supply, countries like us will not be able to power their economies. Now, the government of Tonga has been working to identify technological options and policy measures to attain ambitious strategic targets. Tonga's complex geographical location poses a major challenge to rural and remote electrification and connecting the remaining population to full electricity supply network. Increased use of indigenous renewable energy, such as hydro and solar, offers an opportunity to scale up self-sufficient decentralized electrification system, reaching the remotest island for electrification. Like other countries, Chair, we in Tonga at the decision-making level believe in good quality lighting at schools and households, essential for creating comfortable learning opportunities for children and adults. In the early stage, we need to expand the number and range of opportunities for women and disabilities at home, and thereby generating an independent source of income. We have to ensure that remote and rural residences have also access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services, no matter how remote they are. We also need to reduce air pollution in all areas, which may be able to help extend human health. And we also anticipated a shifting from fossil energy technology to renewables, and boosting the energy efficiency would also reinforce the achievement of sustainability objectives related to access to clean, low saline water scarcity and management. We did also look into the opportunity for holistic approach to energy transition, not only for the power sector, but it covers the entire economy. It also provides an opportunity to leverage a least cost sustainable energy development pathway and direct investment savings to other critical sectors such as healthcare, in building back better from the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, those are the key wish lists designed by the country and have been identified by the newly endorsed Tonga's SDG7 roadmap. Now, Tonga is among the first countries in the Pacific region to implement SDG7, and the key objective of this roadmap is to assist the government of Tonga develop enabling policy measures to achieve the target of not just SDG7 roadmap itself, but also parallel strategic initiatives such as the Tonga Energy Roadmap Plus 2021-2030, our technology needs assessment strategy, the Tonga Energy Efficiency Master Plan, the Climate Change Joint National Action Plan, the Low Emission Development Strategy, and the NTC. This SDG7 roadmap and all other plans and charts contain a matrix of technological options and enabling policy measures for the government of Tonga and development partners to consider. It also presents several scenarios that have been developed using national data, considering existing energy policies and strategies, and reflecting on other development plans that I have already mentioned earlier. These scenarios are expected to enable the government to make an informed decision to develop and implement a set of policies to achieve the SDG7 by 2030, together with other strategic targets. I would expect that this experience will help encourage other countries in the region to dive deeper into a more specific approach to addressing global issues. Perhaps they may be able to join the good work. The implementation of the SDG roadmap has been so far very challenging, and its success can only be achieved through external assistance. An initial approach has been put forth to addressing data gaps to start with, and local counterparts have also progressed with pursuing technical assistance and seeking financial opportunities for the roadmap implementation. We realize from the roadmap development strategy, development states that SDG7 plays a pivotal role on all SDGs, and fulfilling this goal is important to ensure a sustainable energy future, as well as to support the achievement of many other SDGs. Translating it into action in order to achieve 2030 agenda for sustainable development and the objectives of the Paris Agreement is indeed a very complex and challenging task, which always needs collaborative effort and external assistance. Concurrently, the COVID-19 pandemic has added even more challenges. Economic disruptions stimulated by the pandemic have created pressures on livelihood, thereby causing hardships for citizens of the country, although it's still COVID-19 free. The very tight financial constraints has reduced the ability of the government to increase investments in the sustainable energy transition. Fellow workshop participants, I am quite certain that this SDG7 roadmap is not the end point of the cooperation between ESCAP and the government of Tonga. Rather, we will be ready to continue our cooperation for technical assistance, infrastructure development, capacity development, and to ensure that the recommendations are implemented to achieve the SDG7 targets by 2030. We therefore requesting our ESCAP partner in development to remain in close contact with the government of Tonga to discuss opportunities for further cooperation and to facilitate our capacity development needs and others. We anticipate enhancing international cooperation to facilitate access to clean energy research and technology, including renewable energy, energy efficiency, and advanced and cleaner fossil fuel technology, and promote investment in energy infrastructure and clean energy technology. I am confident, Chair, that the Tonga Department of Energy, the local counterparts, with close cooperation with our development partners and the guidance of this SDG7 roadmap strategy, will continue to lead the way in building a secure, resilient and sustainable energy future for Tonga and the Pacific region to ensure that all citizens have access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy. I thank you very much, Chair, and for your attention. Thank you.
Hello, Malo, thank you so much, Mr. Savannah, for sharing your experience and lesson learned in developing the SDG roadmap for Tonga. So it's quite interesting to note the complementary and the work that has been done in terms of the other enabling framework for Tonga. So we look forward to the successful implementation of the SDG roadmap for Tonga. Now we'll move
Thank
on
you,
to
Chair.
next presentation from Fiji. So we have a colleague that will be presenting the experiences for Fiji. We have Mr. Daniela Tambuya, who will present on behalf of the Fijian government on the development of the SDG roadmap.
Thank you, Honorable Excellencies and fellow distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As for Fiji, it was a privilege to work with ESCAP for developing the SDG7 roadmap for Fiji. Thank you, ESCAP, for their assistance and also their helping us in actually developing and understanding the energy sector, the status of the energy sector in Fiji as well. The main focus for the SDG7 target that we were achieving in Fiji was to actually, the main goal, global target for the energy sector is to directly relate us to the climate change initiative. Also the Paris Agreement to align us not just to reduce emissions, but also like for the SDG7 target to actually consider the universal access to modern energy by the world population, and also add to socio-economic flavor, and also the global call for carbon emissions reduction. The achievement for the SDG7 complements the achievement of the Paris Agreement as well, and also our national development plans, and also the NDC. It also identifies the climate action and the models, especially when for the SDG7 it identified different models, various future energy mix scenarios, which actually shows to help us with our policies that are currently for the national energy policy that the countries that we are currently processing at the moment. The SDG7, the ministry actually was the leading coordinator for the SDG7. Data was the main barrier for the process for the SDG7 process, for the SDG7 roadmap for Fiji, especially stakeholder consultation and analysis with modeling tools. So one thing that we realized that most of the stakeholders were actually, majority of the stakeholders really were well received the SDG7 roadmap, because it actually identified pathways for the energy sector in Fiji. Also shows us how we can actually achieve our renewable targets for a better and actually decrease fossil fuels, importations of fossil fuels in Fiji. One of the challenging things that I've already mentioned was also that we found out from the SDG7 roadmap was how infrastructure to also support the scenarios that has been in place. Most of that, the major challenges that have been faced, and the financing to implement these projects, especially from different scenarios and from different policy objectives that has been set out in the SDG7 roadmap. And mostly the rapidly changing of the renewable energy environment. It was that was some of the major challenges that we have seen throughout the SDG7, the development of the SDG7 roadmap. Recommendations of the roadmap that we would actually look into is capacity building and financing of such projects like for the scenarios, especially in renewable energy, electricity sector, energy sector, energy efficiency, and also not forgetting clean cooking. With this SDG7 roadmap, we were able to use for most of our planning documents, as I've already mentioned, in our national energy policy. Also, we were able to develop a clean cooking report for Fiji. And this really showed us the pathway of how we can improve, especially the clean cookie in various sectors, especially in maritime islands. The most contribution that the development of the roadmap was it contributed, like I said, modeling has shed some light on the directions, the milestones to be achieved, and also the extent of the work to achieve the targets. Some of the major factors that we have looked into that are mostly the lessons that we think that we would learn from the developing the SDGs roadmap is the importance of data availability, especially next step modeling, in order to get a real pathway, or like I can say, real ground data, so that we can actually find out the real energy, the real percentage that the country is in at the moment, especially in the transport sector or industrial sector. Fuel consumption, understanding the fuel consumption area is a very difficult task, especially without data. And we would also require multiple stakeholder participation involvement for effective institutional arrangement and frequent forums for active participation from various sectors, and also to identify where each country are at and shows the path to achieve its targets. Yes, the countries are well informed on the status on how to get the targets by the roadmap, and SDG roadmap also proposes options and projected outcomes. The roadmap is realistic in terms of transition, noting that a complete phase out of fossil-based fuel is not practical by 2030. Capacity building on next step 2 was conducted during the SDG7 roadmap for development. This is a one-off training, but further refresher training would be needed at intervals to enhance the ministry's knowledge of the two. In this stage, I would like to thank the ESCAP again, and thank them for showing us the pathway, and also to develop planning strategies for the energy sector in order to make it a clean and sustainable pathway for Fiji, and also for not just for Fiji, but for the Pacific Island countries, and also to reduce the reliance on imported fossil fuels. Benak.
Yes, thank you very much, Dan, for sharing your experience with regards to the development of the SDG roadmap for Fiji. So now we'll move to Indonesia. So now I'll invite Dr. Joko Siswanto, the General Secretary of the National Energy Council, to give his deliberation. Dr. Siswanto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Minister John Yusamale, Excellencies, Excellency Miss Armida Salsiah Ali Shabana, Under Secretary General of the United Nations and the Executive Secretary, ESCAP, Excellencies, Mr. Hong Peng Liu, Director Energy Division ESCAP, Excellency, representative of countries and cities which have participated, Excellencies, all speakers and participants, good morning to all of you. Let us render our gratitude to Almighty God, as by His blessing, this virtual expert working group is made possible to be held. The United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific has developed the National Export SDG tools for energy planning. This tool enables policymakers to make informed policy decisions to support the achievement of the SDG7 target as well as emission reduction target. It is a great honor and pleasure for the Secretariat General of National Energy Council Republic Indonesia to be selected as speakers and participants. The SDG7 roadmap was prepared in accordance with Indonesia's commitment delivered by the President at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Conference of the Parties, COP21, Paris in 2015. Indonesia will reduce GSG in energy sector by 314 million tons of CO2 in 2030 through the development of renewable energy, implementation of energy efficiency, energy conservation, as well as the application of clean energy technology. Indonesia's statement at the G20 meeting, Indonesia will continue to work on addressing issues related to energy access, smart and clean technology, and financing in the energy sector as steps to support the achievement of the Paris Agreement target. The mandate of Law Number 16, year 2016 on ratification of the Paris Agreement, reducing GSG emission by 29% by self-efforts, or 41% with international assistance by 2030. According to NDC, the target for new and renewable energy in the general national energy mix is 23% in 2025 and then increase to 31% in 2050. To reduce energy imports, increase energy security, and support the achievement of SDG7, the National Energy Council prepared the Grand Strategy Energy Nasional for Indonesia. Some of the program including accelerate the utilization of new and renewable power plant by 38 gigawatts by 2035, especially for solar cell and geothermal. Increase the use of electric vehicle. As you know that currently we are still building a battery industry for electric vehicle. Optimizing biofuel production, biodiesel, and also biohydrocarbon. As you know, Indonesia is the first country to use B30. We call it biodiesel with 30% of biodiesel from palm oil. And also encouraging the use of electric stove and also motor vehicle electric. As you know that Indonesia now built the industry battery because we have a lot of nickel as the first component for electric vehicle. We have a lot of resources of the nickel. And then encouraging efficiency, energy conservation in innovation in the field of energy, such as hydrogen, ammonia, and technology of carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And also, we have experience to remove kerosene for cook to LPG, liquid petroleum gas. The challenges faced by Indonesia in achieving net zero emission, because Indonesia is a country that is growing and developing economy, so that it requires considerable energy to support it. And Indonesia now still import of the crude and LPG as well as gasoline. Indonesia emission have not yet reached their peak as in most developed countries. So it takes time to peak emission and then decline to near emission free by 2060 or quick. In addition, funding for the development of renewable energy power plant and the technology use. The result of energy transition pathway for the 2030 agenda, SDG7 roadmap for Indonesia, which developed using national expert SDG7 tool for energy planning, will be input for the revision of the national energy policy and the national energy plan, which will be renewed in next year and also the after next year. We are looking forward to seeing collaboration of SDG7 program with National Energy Policy Program, and hopefully it will support the energy management to achieve the Indonesia energy security. Finally, we hope this expert and can bring fruitful discussion and beneficial conclusion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Siswanto, for sharing with us your experience with regards to the development of the SDG7 roadmap for Indonesia. And I'm really interested in the initiative that you are taking, especially transitioning from kerosene to LPG gas, which I believe is a great development with regards to access to clean energy cooking is concerned. Now I will invite the representative from the government of Lao PDR, Ms. Kotemi Changtamalin. I hope I pronounced your name properly. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce it properly. Deputy Director of the Department of Planning and Cooperation, Ministry of Energy and Mines, to give a deliberation.
Yes. Dear Excellency, Chair, all participants, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Kotemi Changtamalin, Deputy Director General of Planning and Cooperation, Department of Ministry of Energy and Mines. Today, I'm very pleased to join the important meeting for sharing experience, lessons learned, SDG roadmap from last PDR. So we initiative SDG roadmap supported by the ESCAP. So thank you very much. We will receive. SDG roadmap is a pathway to help Laos boosting the social economic development while reducing the CO2 emission. Ministry of Energy and Mines has been developing the energy efficiency policy, regulations and measures. So now after reviewing the roadmap will be disseminated to the stakeholder. Yes, the results and recommendations for the SD roadmap is indeed very challenging. So after reviewing the SD roadmap, will be submitted to the ministry for the considerations, approvals, and implementation. The SDG roadmap will reinforce the energy efficiency policies and energy efficiency measures. The energy efficiency regulations and guidelines have been developed. Various renewable energy resources are including in the NPDP. It's like a National Power Development Plan. And for the lesson learned, so now data collections has been clarified our effective. It's like for source, tries, and consistency. I think now it's not well planned and implemented measures to decompose universal energy access and energy efficiency still not priorities considered in the existing regional and local energy balance. So we will and the systematic implementing should be planned. And for the future, so capacity building still needed. Yes, for the lesson learned and some experience from the first SDG roadmap from Laos PDR. So thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kotemi, for those wonderful deliberation and for sharing your experience with us. Now I welcome the representative from the government of Georgia, Ms. Margarita Arbedis, Deputy Head of Energy Reforms and International Relations Department, Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development, to give a deliberation. Mrs. Arbedis, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, dear Chair, and ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues, good morning. First of all, I would like to thank ESCAP and for developing an SDG7 roadmap tools for Georgia, which was officially published in the beginning of 2021. For this, please accept my sincere gratitude for such a generous work during the past 2 years and preparation of this strategic and document SDG7 roadmap tool for Georgia. I would like to acknowledge that the ESCAP had close collaborated with the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development, provided an assistance and expert support in the preparation of the foregoing document. While Georgia has a huge and renewable energy potential, country's high depend on imported and fossil fuels. Energy transition towards a sustainable and resilient society is vitally important for us, especially taking into account their challenging times. Sustainable energy development is not only renewable energy utilization, but its synergies between energy efficiency, renewable energy technologies, and relevant policies development, which requires the availability of the resources and proper investment, environment, and strong and political will, as well as an active and cooperation among stakeholders. It should be also highlighted the importance of common region cooperation as a fundamental platform for the sustainable energy development. Despite this, there was no clear and SDG7 achieving analysis and guidelines. In this regard, and proposed roadmap will serve to be a measure guidelines which will result in the clear strategy for implementation of the SDG and commitments and obligations. At the same time, I would like to acknowledge a crucial role on energy division representatives in promoting the consequences and supporting the finalizing process with the significant outcomes. Local stakeholders also had a very active engagement during the whole process, which was very important for the process. It should be highlighted the stakeholders consultation and meetings that was held in Georgia in 2019, also online meeting that was held in mid-2020. We had such a fruitful meeting and such insightful comments and recommendations from participants. So this was a very good idea to hold such event from capacity building point of view, as well as the since and SDGs matters, and were new and for some participants. Despite challenges caused by the COVID-19, was managed to work effectively during the whole year and bring to life this important roadmap. The document was well received by the government representatives as well as the academia and NGOs. Based on the roadmap, it's clear that despite the low cost of energy in the country, energy efficiency measures have no alternative in terms of the economic, environmental, and energy security aspects. It is the most cost-effective way to describe an energy intensity in the country, which is still very high, as well as to implement new and up-to-date technology in the various sectors. I would like to inform that the roadmap was prepared for 15 condemnation and GNG and emissions by 2030, according to the Georgia NDC, which was updated a few months earlier, and now unconditional targets is 35%. In this regard, we would very much be happy to communicate and on the better solution to deal with this new reality. Based on the roadmap and recommendation provided, and we believe that the energy sector development in Georgia will be in promoting a sustainable energy development and will respond sustainable development goals in the near future. Since we have an including and funding of the roadmap in the country development document, national energy and climate change in 2021 and 2030, which will play a crucial role for further sector development. Once again, thank you very much for a wonderful cooperation. Wish you all a nice day and fruitful day ahead, and hope to see you in person soon in this meeting. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Arbazid, for those excellent deliberation and for sharing your experiences with us, particularly with Georgia's plan in terms of minimize the reliance on imported fuel and your transition towards renewable energy. Also very important what you've raised with regards to the political support and the political will for us to move towards achieving our SDG targets and also our respective national development plan targets. So thank you so much for that. Now I have the pleasure of inviting the representative from the government of Vietnam, Ms. Gwen Phuong Mai, Deputy Director of Electricity and Renewable Energy Authority, Ministry of Industry and Trade, to give a deliberation. Mrs. Mai, you have the floor.
Thank you, Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am delighted and honored to be here and attend our working group. Firstly, I would like to express the sincere thanks from Vietnam to the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific, ESCAP, for the developments of the National Express SDG tool for the energy planning. This tool would enable policymakers to make informed policy decisions to support the achievement of the SDG7 target as well as emissions reduction targets. As you may know, Vietnam is one of the fastest growing economies in the Southeast Asia. Vietnam is in the middle income countries with a population of nearly 100 million and have a very dynamic energy markets, among the largest in the regions. And the Vietnam's energy system is in the second largest in Asia, just after Indonesia's. However, Vietnam's strong economic growth is now based on an energy-intensive consuming economy, especially the demand for the electricity in which the coal-fired power source account for